Okay, welcome to round 5 of our monthly Modern Challenge. This is June, as you can tell by the short sleeve shirts. And these gentlemen are 3-1. They're planning to move on to 4-1 and have a chance to make top 8. The loser will drop to 3-2 and probably have to settle for some cash money 9th through 16th. Both Scott and Nick, no strangers to the feature match area. Nick, I believe, has top aided only one of these tournaments, though it might be 2. Always remember the winner, never remember the top aiders. So it goes. Don't remember the silver medalists, only the winners. So Nick's going to try and win today. Scott has top aided a couple of them. This Green, White, Death, and Taxes deck that I love to feature. It is one of my favorite decks in the room. They're the only ones that can actually use Aether Vial. And he'll start with his best land, the Temple Garden. Allow him to cast. What is that card, Scott? I don't know. I don't know. That glare is terrible. Inquisition, gonna let us see Scott's hand. Resto, Thalia, Blade Splicer, Path to Exile. Pretty nice hand. Got a curve of 2, 3, 4. Then, of course, the Inquisition can disrupt. But still very sweet. And that's why I like the deck. It's consistent, and it's powerful. Now, it's like a deck like Merfolk is consistent, but it's not powerful. All its cards work together to make synergies. But this deck has a nice curve. And actually, its cards do something on their own. So, the Thalia comes down. I believe that 1-drop had to have been a Noble Hierarch, by the way. Goyf for Nick. Lowly little 2-3. Still good. Let's see if it eats a path immediately. Nick, by the way, playing an Abzan Aggro deck. Not a Death Shadow deck. It has a little more expensive cards than that. It's going for cards like Grimflayer and Dark Confidant rather than Death Shadow and Street Wraith. Still dealing itself damage, but with the Bob. So Thalia comes in exalted. 3 first strike gets through. Drops Nick to 16. And Flicker Wisp comes on the board, threatening 4-point life chunks, bouncing a land, keeping Path to Exile up. Let's see if Nick has a piece of removal to get rid of the flyer. You gotta figure that's priority number 1 for him. Stabilize the board, let his giant creatures take over, let his Dark Confidants have a stabilized life total with which to work. And there is the Confidant. Tarmogoyf attacks. 2-3 coming in. Scott says, okay. He thinks he's the aggro. I tend to agree. Path to Exile takes out Bob, but also increases Tarmogoyf. Tarmogoyf now a 3-4 thanks to Path to Exile. Somehow there's no land in a graveyard yet. Five coming in for Scott. By my calculations, Nick is at 11 life. $18 to 11, rather $16 to 11. There you see Nick in his glory, freshly shaven and sculpted beard, freshly purchased Game of Thrones shirt. Scott added to the board a Blade Splicer. Some first strikeage to hold the ground. Blade Splicer to chump block. And honestly, who would have thought that Blade Splicer was a modern card? A 3-mana do-nothing creature. And, you know, when I say do-nothing, I mean doesn't immediately affect the board. And this is all of a sudden gummed up. Exactly the kind of board state Nick wants, because he has Dark Confidant in his deck. He has creature lands in his deck. He has planeswalkers with ultimate abilities in his deck. He loves a stalled board state. Scott has to find a way to punch through. That face on the right, I've seen that face many times. The face of a man deep in thought. Face of a man pretty good at this green-white creature strategy. He's played it for a long time. Ever since I've been seeing him at modern tournaments, Scott has been playing green-white Death and Taxes. Maybe not quite a deck of his own design, but definitely a deck that, at least in the Northeast, he has been the trailblazer on. So, Blade Splicer token attacks. Gets Exalted Trigger. It's a 4/4 first strike. Tarmogoyf is a 4/5 sorcery instant creature land. Tarmogoyf's a 4/5. So this is an interesting attack, right? Because it's a 4/4 first strike, but Tarmogoyf's a 5/5. So why is Scott attacking? If I'm Nick, I don't know the answer to this question. Did Scott just miscount? Oh my god, Scott just miscounted Tarmogoyf. It was a bluff attack or he miscounted. Awkward. Awkward. I'm going to give Scott the benefit of the doubt there, say it was a bluff attack, because, I mean, the man's counted a Tarmogoyf before. Maybe even more than one. Lingering Souls flashed back. 4 power flying right now. But Resto Angel should prevent any attacks, at least for the time being. Nick could consider an attack with Tarmogoyf right here, if he can make it just a little bigger. Main deck Nihil Spellbomb. X1, a Miser's Nihil Spellbomb for Nick Allain. So Scott untaps. Four in the air. Nick has to take it. Nick down to 7. Maybe 6 because of a fetch land. I think it's actually 6. My bad. That's how a man looks when he only has 6 life remaining. Whoops. Scott's head. I'm a professional commentator, but an amateur filmmaker. I will not be receiving an award for videography at the end of the year. And I'll show you why. Yeah, that's why. I set that camera up. Look at how beautiful it is, how in focus on Scott's hair. Really, I'm just jealous I have no hair. Back to the game. Nihil Spellbomb takes care of Scott's Graveyard. Kind of awkward. Shrinks his own Tarmogoyf. His Tarmogoyf is now a 3/4. No instant, no creature. Somehow no creature yet. Three mana. Abrupt Decay will target the Thalia. And Fatal Push will target the Resto. That's a turn. Tarmogoyf back up to 5/6. But he can't attack. He just has to say go. The Resto, 4/5 Restoration Angel, will just continue to crash inward towards Nick's life total. Nick is on a 2-turn clock. He must deal with the Resto. He has something like 5 turns to do it. No card draw is going to help him get there. Bob is way too risky right now. Remaining in his deck, he has 3 Path to Exiles, a Maelstrom Pulse, a couple Fatal Pushes. So he's about 6 outs right now. Grimflayer off the top. And Nick really can't attack. It's crazy. These first striking golem tokens are just preventing the attack. And it's awkward because he doesn't want to have to spend a removal spell on Blade Splicer when this Restoration Angel is just beating him down. Scott adds Leon and Arbiter to the board. I do nothing. Nick adds a Swamp. Scott just gonna keep marching in with this Resto. Pretty soon he'll be able to attack with Flicker Wisp too. Another jump. Scott adds an Aether Vial. A lot of dead draws in the deck for these guys. When only a few cards matter, all of these do-nothings just really hurt to draw. He says go. Scott taps. Counter on the Vial. Now, will Scott attack with both of his flyers now? I think I would. Put your opponent on a 1-turn clock. Nick, I don't know as well. Nick, I just met a few events ago. I'm mostly impressed with his Death Shadow play at the time. Thought he was a player to watch, and he has not proved me wrong. He top 8 another event, and he's usually at the top tables of these TJ's challenges. And wow, look at this. Scott crashes. And oh, he drew a path. Unfortunate. It's like a judge call here. Because Scott failed to pay 2 mana to search his deck with Path to Exile. Lean on Arbiter, not just opponents. Also yourself. Easy to forget about when so much is going on and the extra land doesn't matter. So Scott does not get the land. Nick playing it pretty aggressively there. I'd say aggressively is a good way to describe how he played that. So Nick, by my calculations, drops to about 3. I think 3 is his life total. And wow, Nick Lingering Souls off the top. Wow. How impressive is that? Can he attack, though? Now, Scott could have taken out Nick's green sources there, or rather Nick's white sources there, eliminating Lingering Souls as a draw. But you have, I mean, you have to figure he only has 1 or 2 left in the deck, so it's not unreasonable to save them for creature lands. I can't fault Scott for that decision, but it does look awkward now, doesn't it? I also have the benefit of knowing there's only 1 basic plains in Nick's deck. If there were 2, Scott would feel really weird about that. Basically throwing his Ghost Quarters away for no reason. Now the Blade Splicer will have to just chomp through the Souls tokens. It's going to take a while. A lot of turns for Nick to draw a removal spell. In the meantime, he gets to crash in with a 4/4 Grim Flayer and a huge Tarmogoyf. I believe it's a 5/6 Tarmogoyf. No enchantments or planeswalkers in the graveyard yet. Like the Splicer's gonna jump in the way. Scott does take 4, and Nick gets a trigger. Wow, another Lingering Souls. Is this real life right now? Nick Allain running excellently in this game. Scott gonna need something really special here. Green Cartouche would be good. Aether Vial would not. That will not do anything. So Scott had Nick on the ropes. Had him down to maybe 1 or 2 chump blockers. Decided to attack with all of his creatures on the crucial turn. Saying to himself, okay, well, Nick's only draw probably would have been Path to Exile. The only thing that screws me here is Path to Exile, and that was the draw. Unfortunate. Wow, Scavenging Ooze. Nick Allain, is this your day? It sure seems like it. Yep, scoop from Scott. So Nick takes game 1, trying to move on to 4-1 here in Milford. Scott looks at his board. Nothing really crazy here for the Abzan matchup. Stony Silence, no. Rexage, no. Gaddock, no. Forge Tender, no. The only things that I can see him bringing in here, the Linvala, that one's good. An extra flyer. A card that can stop the ooze that we saw was in the main deck. So Linvala will come in. Not the best card, but it's okay. And Sunlance. Scott will board in Sunlance. That one's fine. And wow, do you see this here? He's taking out his Aether Vials. Now, very few players would do this. Very few. I support this decision from Scott. People never think to take out a card like Aether Vial. They never think to do it because it's the core of their deck, right? It makes their deck run. But in a slow matchup where you're going to cast all these cards anyway, well, it's just a dead card. And in a top deck war, like we just saw there, drawing an Aether Vial is the worst. It does nothing. So Scott wisely takes those out. And I saw him side in not the cards at all I was thinking of. I thought he was going to side in Linvala and Sunlance. He sides in Teague and Rest in Peace. Now, Rest in Peace I missed. That one obviously comes in against the Tarmogoyfs and the Grim Flayers. But Gaddock Teague? Maybe he thinks Scott's Nick is doing something different. Something other than what he's doing. because, looking at the deck, it hits nothing. It hits 1 Damnation in the sideboard. That's literally it. 1 Damnation and 1 Murderous Cut. So he hits 2 out of the 75. Now, granted, both of those 2 will be coming in, but that's not great. And if Scott knew Nick's exact deck list, I think he might side in the Linvala instead. Maybe even the Sunlance. Nick, on the other hand, has a lot of things to bring in. He has Collective Brutalities, Flaying Tendrils, an extra Liliana, Damnations and Murderous Cut, so he overloads on creature removal. The important card for Scott is Rest in Peace. Scott Metcalf, on your right there, is going to be a dad. Found that out recently. Saw it on Facebook. Pretty awesome. It's so cool to see these players that I've played with for a long time, I've known for a long time. You know, I don't know Scott super well. We've never roomed at tournaments. We've never carpooled to tournaments. But to see these players living their lives outside of Magic, accomplishing things, having families, it's really cool. Really, really cool. Scott keeping a 1-lander, 2 Hierarchs. Doesn't hit the land, but he now has removal protection with this other Hierarch. Let's see what Nick has. If I see my opponent on just 1 land, I might start aggressively attacking these creatures, especially if he has 2 kill spells here. Interesting decision from Scott. He doesn't slam the Rest in Peace. He does Brutality. 2 modes. Killing the Noble and making Scott discard a Path to Exile, only legal target. Kind of a loose mode because, I mean, Scott only has 4 targets in the whole deck, but the Lingering Souls is better in the graveyard. Or so he thinks. Now a decision point for Scott. He has an Eternal Witness that is a non-bow with his Rest in Peace. But if he doesn't slam Rest in Peace, maybe it gets tagged by a Thoughtseize or an Inquisition. It's really hard here. And Scott, wow, okay. He goes with neither one. Neither one. I like it. The Scavenging Ooze's hand also prevents these things happening. Ooh, Flaying Tendrils. Scott gets punished. And no land means Scott just has to slam Rest in Peace. No, chooses not to. Okay. He's sticking with his Resto Eternal Witness plan. Ooze of his own. Ouch. Now the Rest in Peace has to come down. It just has to. Because Ooze will eat Scott's whole graveyard. That Eternal Witness will never be fired off. Just has to be the rest here. I can't see any other play but Scott slamming Rest in Peace. Restoration Angel is the biggest creature if Rest in Peace is in play. Allain has no creature that can compare to a 3/4 flyer. So the restos on their own should be good enough. Yeah, good. I like this decision. Scavenging Ooze will become a 3/3. And Nick will gain 1 life, but It's worth it. Rest in Peace shuts down Nick's deck, and Nick has no removal for this crucial enchantment. So Scott is saying, oh boy, I really hope Nick doesn't have enchantment removal. I hope he doesn't have Kasali Pride Mage. But little does he know, Nick has not a single way to deal with that in his whole deck. Nick going to fetch up basic lands, take as little damage as possible. Unfortunate for Scott, he does not hit a land for Resto. Have to figure if he hits a land for Resto, he's in great shape. Scott takes a chunk. There's a land. Okay, that's good. He can now eat any of Nick's creatures when Nick attacks. Three mana. Stirring Wildwood. Nick trying to figure out if this all-in strategy will work. Ah, the handshake. Nick drew the path. Scott missed on lands for a couple too many turns. Unfortunate, he had the best card in the matchup. And if he had time to just deploy his threats and sit behind a wall of creatures, there's no way he would lose that, but it is what it is. He kept a one-lander, a one-land, 2 Noble Hierarchan, based on the strength of his powerful sideboard card. Didn't draw it just for too late. Not sure about the Teague, but like I said, I'm the one who can see the deck list, so I know the Teague's no good. Nick Allain moves to 4-1. Everybody, thanks for watching this video of Scott vs. Nick here at the June TJ's Monthly Challenge. Let this YouTube playlist roll on. Roll on. And also, at the end of it, check out the deck techs I've done today. Did one with Gordo Callanan. Infect with Troll Aesthetic in the sideboard. We talked about what's a good and what's a bad meta for Infect. How he dealt with the loss of Probe, his Troll Aesthetics in the sideboard. Also going to be doing one with Ben Riley in between this round and next. That'll be at the end of the playlist too. He's the only person who plays Cheerios. Cool to put a spotlight on local players who can succeed with decks outside the norm. So check that out. Let me know what you think in the comments, please, so I can improve for next time. Thanks for watching, everybody.